The rusty key trembled in Maya's hand as she stood before the weathered cabin door, her pregnant belly pressing against her thin coat in the bitter Appalachian wind. With only $17 to her name and an eviction notice burning in her pocket, this crumbling inheritance was her last hope. But the moment she stepped inside, Maya knew something was impossibly wrong. The air hummed with an energy that made her unborn baby kick violently, and shadows danced in corners where no light should cast them. Behind a loose floorboard, she found what her great-grandmother had hidden for decades, a leather-bound journal filled with impossible stories of healing touch, of women in their family who could cure the incurable, and a warning written in blood-red ink. The gift awakens with new life, but it comes with a terrible price. Maya's hands began to glow with a soft, golden light as she read, and she realized her poverty was the least of her problems. What ancient power had been sleeping in her bloodline, waiting for this moment to awaken? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Maya stumbled backward, dropping the journal as if it had burned her. The golden glow faded from her hands, leaving her wondering if exhaustion and stress had finally driven her to hallucinations. The baby inside her had gone still the moment she'd released the book, as if it too sensed the wrongness of what had just occurred. She wrapped her arms around her 7-month belly and tried to steady her breathing. The cabin felt smaller now, pressing in on her with its secrets. Dust motes danced in the weak afternoon light filtering through grimy windows, and somewhere in the walls the old wood creaked and settled like whispers. The drive from Nashville had taken 5 hours in her dying Honda, following GPS directions down increasingly narrow mountain roads until she'd reached this place the time seemed to have forgotten. The lawyer's letter had been brief. Great-grandmother Iris had left her the property, though Maya could barely remember meeting the woman more than twice as a child. Her mother had never spoken of Iris except in hushed, uncomfortable tones, usually followed by a quick change of subject. Now Maya understood why. She bent carefully to retrieve the journal, her back aching from the long drive and the weight she carried. The leather cover was supple despite its apparent age, and strange symbols were etched around its borders. Not quite letters, not quite pictures, but something that seemed to shift when she wasn't looking directly at them. The first page was written in faded ink, but the handwriting was surprisingly clear. To my blood daughters who come after, this gift is not a blessing, though it may seem so at first. What flows through our veins has protected the mountain folk for 7 generations, but each use demands payment. The more we heal, the more of ourselves we give away. I have seen my grandmother fade to nothing but whispers on the wind. I watched my own mother forget her name in service to others. Now I feel my time coming, and I pray my daughter will never need to open this book. Maya's hands shook as she turned the page. Her grandmother had died when Maya was young, a sudden illness that the doctors couldn't explain. Her mother had always been distant, distracted, as if part of her existed somewhere else entirely. The awakening comes with childbearing, the next entry read. The life growing within calls to the old power, and it answers whether we will it or not. But know this, our gift is strongest when our need is greatest. The mountains remember what we have done for them, and they will protect what is precious to us. The baby kicked again, harder this time, and Maya gasped. In that moment, she felt something she couldn't name, a connection that stretched beyond the cabin walls, threading through the roots of ancient trees and the bones of the mountains themselves. For just an instant, she could sense every living thing within miles, the deer picking their way through the underbrush, the hawks circling overhead, even the bacteria in the creek water down the hill. Then it was gone, leaving her dizzy and clutching the doorframe. Outside, the wind had picked up, rattling the windows and setting the bare tree branches to dancing. Night was coming fast in the mountains, and Maya had nowhere else to go. The cabin had electricity. She'd tested the single overhead bulb, but no heat beyond a stone fireplace that looked like it hadn't been used in years. She made her way to the kitchen, such as it was, and opened the ancient refrigerator. Empty, as expected, but it hummed to life. At least she could store the few groceries she could afford. The cabinets held some basic dishes and an old-fashioned percolator that might actually work. As she explored, Maya tried to ignore the journal lying open on the dusty table. But its presence seemed to fill the room, demanding attention she wasn't ready to give. Whatever her great-grandmother had been, whatever this gift was supposed to be, it felt too large and terrifying for someone who couldn't even afford prenatal vitamins. But as darkness settled over the mountains and the cabin's shadows deepened, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that, ready or not, the choice had already been made for her. The cabin groaned like an old woman's bones as Maya pushed open the warped front door. Dust motes danced in the afternoon light streaming through grimy windows, and the musty smell of decades-old neglect hit her like a physical wall. She pressed a protective hand to her swollen belly, feeling the baby's answering kick. "Well, little one," she whispered, "it's not much, but it's ours." The letter from the estate attorney still crinkled in her jacket pocket, its formal language burned into her memory. "Property inherited from Evangeline Thorne, your great-grandmother." Maya had never even known Evangeline existed until 3 weeks ago, when her own world had crumbled along with Dr. Patterson's devastating diagnosis. Genetic disorder. Untreatable. "I'm sorry, Miss Thorne." The floorboards creaked ominously under her feet as she explored the cabin's 3 small rooms. Everything was coated in a thick layer of dust, mismatched furniture draped in white sheets like ghosts, shelves lined with mason jars containing unidentifiable dried herbs, and books whose spines were too faded to read. The kitchen held an ancient wood-burning stove and a hand pump over a rust-stained sink. Maya sank into a chair that threatened to collapse under her weight. What had she been thinking, driving 6 hours into these godforsaken mountains? Her savings account held exactly $43. Her landlord had already started eviction proceedings, and here she was, playing house in what looked like a set piece from a horror movie. The baby kicked again, more insistently this time. Dr. Patterson's words echoed in her head. "Without intervention, the condition is always fatal. I wish I had better news." She'd spent every waking hour since then researching, calling specialists, exploring experimental treatments. Everything required money she didn't have, or waited lists stretching months into the future. Months her baby didn't have. The inheritance had felt like a sign, a last-ditch possibility. Maybe she could sell the property, use whatever money it brought to fund treatment. Looking around now, she realized the cabin might be worth more as kindling. A photograph on the mantelpiece caught her attention. Through the dust and grime, she could make out a woman's face, sharp cheekbones and dark eyes that seemed startlingly familiar. Maya wiped the glass clean with her sleeve, revealing the image more clearly. The woman looked to be in her 30s, with long black hair and Maya's exact nose. At the bottom, someone had written in faded ink, "Evangeline Thorne, 1952. "So, you're the mysterious great-grandmother," Maya murmured, studying the photograph. "What were you running from that brought you all the way up here?" A sudden gust of wind rattled the windows, and somewhere in the cabin's depths, a door slammed shut. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. The sound had come from behind her, but when she turned, all the doors she'd opened were exactly as she'd left them. She forced herself to breathe slowly. Old houses made strange noises. That was all. But as she moved toward the back of the cabin to investigate, her foot caught on something protruding from beneath a threadbare rug. She knelt awkwardly, her pregnant belly making the movement clumsy, and pulled back the fabric. Underneath lay a wooden trapdoor with an iron ring handle, barely visible in the shadows. Maya's pulse quickened. The estate attorney hadn't mentioned anything about a basement or cellar. She grasped the iron ring and pulled. The trapdoor resisted at first, then gave way with a groan that seemed to echo from deep underground. Cool air rushed up from the opening, carrying with it a scent that was completely different from the mustiness above, something clean and herbal like mint and lavender. Maya fumbled for her phone's flashlight and peered down into the darkness. Wooden steps descended about 8 feet to what looked like a stone floor. The space below wasn't a typical root cellar. From what she could see, the walls were lined with shelves, and something metallic glinted in her phone's beam. Every rational part of her brain screamed against climbing down into an unknown space beneath a decrepit cabin, especially while 7 months pregnant and completely alone. But something else, some instinct she couldn't name, pulled her toward the opening. The wooden steps held her weight, though they creaked ominously with each careful descent. As her feet touched the stone floor, Maya raised her phone higher and gasped. She stood in a perfectly preserved room that seemed untouched by time. Shelves lined every wall, filled with glass bottles containing liquids in impossible colors, deep purples that seemed to shift in the light, greens so vivid they glowed, and silver that moved like mercury. Dried herbs hung in neat bundles from the ceiling beams, filling the air with their medicinal fragrance. But it was the object in the center of the room that made Maya's breath catch in her throat. On a small wooden table sat a leather-bound journal, open as if someone had just been reading it. Next to it lay a pendant on a silver chain, its stone pulsing with a faint rhythmic light, a light that perfectly matched the rhythm of her baby's heartbeat. The morning sun filtered through the grimy windows, casting long shadows across the cabin's main room as Maya surveyed the chaos around her. Boxes of her meager belongings sat unopened while she'd spent the night poring over her great-grandmother's journal by lamplight. The leather-bound book had revealed impossible things, recipes for healing tinctures that claimed to mend broken bones overnight, sketches of plants that seemed to glow on the yellowed pages, and most unsettling of all, detailed accounts of births where babies who should have died instead thrived under Ilara's care. Maya's hand instinctively moved to her belly, where at 2008 weeks her daughter continued her precarious fight for survival. The doctors had been blunt about the spina bifida diagnosis, painting a grim picture of surgeries, disabilities, and uncertain outcomes. Yet here, in faded ink, were dozens of similar cases where Ilara had seemingly worked miracles. She needed air, needed to think clearly without the musty smell of decades-old secrets clouding her judgment. The mountain trail behind the cabin beckoned, and despite her growing belly making every step more challenging, Maya found herself drawn into the woods her great-grandmother had once walked. The forest felt alive in ways the city never had. Every rustle of leaves seemed purposeful, every bird call a message she couldn't quite decipher. 20 minutes up the winding path, she discovered what looked like an old garden, though garden seemed too tame a word for the wild abundance before her. Plants grew in seemingly random patterns, yet something about their arrangement felt intentional, almost musical in its rhythm. Maya pulled the journal from her jacket pocket, comparing the sketches to the living specimens around her. There, the 7-pointed leaves of what Ilara had labeled Child's Blessing, and beside it, the silvery stems of Moon's Comfort. According to the journal, when combined under specific circumstances, these plants could strengthen a developing child in the womb, correcting what nature had failed to perfect. You're seeing it too, aren't you? Maya spun around, her heart hammering. An elderly woman emerged from between the trees, moving with surprising grace despite her obvious age. Her silver hair was braided with what looked like the same plants Maya had been studying, and her dark eyes held a knowing warmth that made Maya's knees weak. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize anyone else was up here," Maya stammered, clutching the journal protectively. "No need to apologize, child. These woods belong to your family as much as mine." The woman stepped closer, and Maya caught the scent of pine and something sweeter, more mysterious. "I'm Cordelia Thorne. I've been waiting for you." "Waiting for me?" "Your great-grandmother and I were close. I helped her with her work, learned from her. When she passed, I promised I'd watch over this place until her bloodline returned." Cordelia's gaze dropped to Maya's belly, then to the journal in her hands. "I see you've found her records." Maya felt tears threatening. I don't understand any of this. The things written in here, they're impossible. People don't just heal terminal illnesses with plants and good intentions, don't they? Cordelia moved to a patch of blue flowers that seemed to shimmer in the dappled sunlight. Your great-grandmother healed my daughter once, born with a hole in her heart that the doctors said would kill her before her first birthday. Ilara worked with these plants, with the old knowledge, and my Sarah lived to be 93 years old. The older woman's fingers traced the journal's leather cover. The gift doesn't come from the plants alone, Maya. It comes from you, from the love and intention you bring to the healing. The bloodline carries something special, a connection to the life force itself, but it requires belief, sacrifice, and absolute commitment. Maya's scientific mind rebelled against every word, yet something deeper, more primal, recognized truth in what Cordelia was saying. She thought of her daughter's ultrasound images, of the doctor's compassionate but hopeless expression, of the long nights she'd spent bargaining with a universe that seemed determined to take everything from her. Even if I believed this, Maya whispered, I wouldn't know where to start. Cordelia smiled, and for a moment Maya could swear the forest around them grew brighter. That's what I'm here for. Your great-grandmother's journal contains the recipes, but the real knowledge, the way to awaken what's already inside you, that's passed from teacher to student, woman to woman, generation to generation. A gentle breeze stirred the plants around them, carrying scents that made Maya's head spin with sudden clarity. She could almost feel something stirring in her blood, like a door slowly creaking open after decades of being locked. How long do we have? Cordelia asked gently. Maya calculated quickly. About 12 weeks before she's due. Then we begin today. But Maya, Cordelia's expression grew serious. This path isn't without risks. The old ways demand as much as they give. Are you prepared for that? Looking down at her belly, feeling her daughter's small movements, Maya knew there was only one answer she could give. Maya's fingers trembled as she lifted the leather-bound journal from its resting place among the crystals. The cover felt warm against her palms, as if it had been sitting in sunlight rather than buried in darkness for decades. She carried it to the main room, where pale morning light filtered through grimy windows, settling carefully into the old rocking chair by the fireplace. The journal's pages whispered secrets as she opened to the first entry, written in faded ink with an elegant hand. June 15th, 1952. The gift has awakened in me fully now, just as grandmother said it would when I came of age. I can feel the pulse of life in every living thing, the rabbits hiding in the brush, the ancient oaks that have witnessed centuries, even the smallest wildflowers pushing through stone. But it's more than feeling. I can heal. Maya's breath caught. She pressed one hand to her belly, feeling the flutter of movement within. Her baby, only 5 months along, and already showing signs of the genetic condition that had claimed her mother's life at 32. The same condition doctors warned could take Maya too if she carried to term. July 3rd, 1952. Mrs. Henderson brought her boy today, the one with the withered arm. The doctors in Knoxville said nothing could be done, but I placed my hands on him and felt the warmth flow through me, into him. The bone straightened, muscle grew strong. His arm is whole now. She wept and tried to pay me. But how do you put a price on what was given freely by the earth itself? The words blurred as tears filled Maya's eyes. She thought of the ultrasound images tucked away in her purse, the pictures showing her daughter's malformed heart, the chambers that wouldn't develop properly, the vessels that grew in twisted paths. The specialists had been gentle but firm, incompatible with life, they'd said. Even if the baby survived birth, she wouldn't live past her first year. September 20th, 1952. I understand now why grandmother always seemed so tired, why she aged faster than other women. The gift takes as much as it gives. Each healing pulls something from deep within, like drawing water from a well. I must be careful not to empty myself completely. For what good would I be to anyone then? Maya flipped through several pages, scanning entries about successful healings, grateful families, and the weight of keeping such a profound secret. Then an entry from 1954 made her heart stop. March 8, 1954. I am with child, and the doctors say what I already know in my bones. Something is wrong. The baby's spine isn't forming right. They want me to. They say I should let nature take its course. But how can I, when I carry the power to heal in my very blood? Tonight I will attempt something I've never tried before. I will heal my own child, still growing within me. The next entry was dated a week later. March 15th, 1954. It worked. I can barely hold this pen, so weak I am from the effort, but it worked. I felt my daughter's spine straighten and strengthen, felt the vertebrae align as they should. The warmth that flowed from my hands into my womb was unlike anything I've ever experienced, pure love made manifest. She moves normally now, strong and healthy. Maya's grandmother. Her great-grandmother had healed her own unborn grandmother in the womb, which meant she flipped frantically through more pages, searching for mentions of the bloodline, of how the gift passed from mother to daughter. Near the journal's end, she found what she was looking for. December 1st, 1958. My Sarah grows strong and shows the early signs. Yesterday I found her in the garden, holding a wilted daisy. When she opened her hands, it bloomed fresh and bright. The gift lives on, as it always has, as it always will. Each woman in our line carries the spark, though not all choose to nurture it into flame. Maya's hands shook as she read the final entries, descriptions of teaching techniques, of meditation practices that opened the channels for healing energy, of herbs that amplified the natural abilities. Her great-grandmother had left detailed instructions, as if she'd known that someday someone would desperately need them. A movement outside caught her eye. Through the window, she saw a deer standing at the edge of the clearing, watching her with dark, intelligent eyes. As their gazes met, she felt something stir deep in her chest, a warmth that seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. The deer stepped closer, and Maya noticed its left front leg was injured, held at an awkward angle. Without thinking, she rose from the chair and walked slowly toward the door. The animal didn't flee as she approached, instead standing perfectly still as she knelt beside it. Maya reached out hesitantly and placed her palm against the deer's injured leg. Immediately, heat flooded through her fingers, not painful, but intense and purposeful. The deer's breathing deepened, and she felt something shifting beneath her touch, bones realigning, torn ligaments mending. When the warmth faded, the deer stepped back and walked away without the slightest limp. Maya stared at her hands in wonder. The gift was real. It lived in her blood, and perhaps it could save them both. Maya's hands trembled as she carefully lifted the leather-bound journal from its resting place beside the glass vials. The cover was worn smooth by countless fingers, and when she opened it, the pages released the scent of dried herbs and something else, something that reminded her of summer rain on mountain stone. The first entry was dated 1923, written in elegant script that flowed across the yellowed paper like water. Today I delivered Sarah McKinney's third child, a breech birth that nearly claimed them both. The old ways saved them when modern medicine would have failed. Mama always said the gift runs strongest in women who've known loss, and I understand now what she meant. The mountain remembers, and so do we. Maya sank into the wooden chair, her free hand instinctively moving to her belly. The baby stirred, a gentle flutter that had become increasingly rare over the past few days. Dr. Hoffman's words echoed in her memory. The condition is genetic, Maya. There's nothing we can do except monitor and hope. She turned the page, and her great-grandmother's voice seemed to whisper from the past. Eleanor Whitmore came to me today, her baby failing in the womb. The doctors in Knoxville sent her home to grieve, but I saw the silver thread still connecting mother to child, faint but present. The moonstone tincture, combined with the breathing ritual grandmother taught me, strengthened what was weak. Eleanor delivered a healthy son 2 months later. Maya's breath caught. The symptoms Eleanor's case described matched exactly what she was experiencing: the decreased movement, the persistent cramping, the sense that something vital was slipping away. She flipped through more pages, finding case after case of women who'd sought out her great-grandmother help when conventional medicine offered no hope. "The gift is not magic," read one entry from 1935. "It is understanding, seeing the patterns of life force that flow through all living things. Every woman in our bloodline carries this sight, though not all choose to develop it. The mountain calls to us because here, away from the noise of the world, we can hear what the body truly needs." Maya set the journal aside and picked up one of the glass vials. The liquid inside shimmered with an opalescent quality, like crushed pearls suspended in honey. A small label in the same careful handwriting read, "For the strengthening of bonds between mother and child." Her rational mind rebelled. She was a practical woman who balanced checkbooks and researched every decision. But her body was failing her unborn daughter despite the best medical care available, and sitting in this hidden room, surrounded by generations of women's wisdom, the impossible felt suddenly within reach. A loud crash from somewhere in the cabin made her jump. The front door slammed and heavy footsteps crossed the main room. Maya quickly closed the journal and stood, her heart racing. She wasn't expecting anyone, and the nearest neighbor was miles away. "Hello?" a man's voice called. "Anybody home?" Maya glanced around the hidden room, realizing with growing panic that she'd left the bookshelf entrance wide open. The footsteps were moving closer, accompanied by the sound of someone examining the cabin's interior. She heard drawers opening, furniture being moved. "I know someone's been here," the voice said, closer now. Trucks outside, lights were on. Maya quietly moved to the entrance, clutching the journal to her chest. Through the gap she could see into the main room where a tall man in a sheriff's uniform was examining the newly cleaned kitchen. His badge caught the lamplight as he turned, revealing a weathered face and suspicious eyes. "Ma'am, if you're in here, I need you to show yourself. I'm Deputy Carson with the county sheriff's office." Maya's mind raced. She could reveal herself, but how would she explain the hidden room? The artifacts clearly had value, historical if nothing else, and she had no idea about the legal implications of her discovery. For all she knew, the cabin's previous owners had retained rights to any contents. The deputy's radio crackled. "Unit 7, what's your status on the Walsh property?" "Still checking it out, dispatch. Definite signs of recent occupation. Gonna need to locate the new owner." Maya pressed herself against the wall of the hidden room, hardly daring to breathe. The deputy's footsteps moved through the cabin systematically, and she heard him testing doors, looking for any spaces he might have missed. "Whole place has been cleaned up," he muttered to himself. "Someone's definitely living here." The footsteps stopped just outside the hidden room. Maya could see his shadow through the crack, could hear him breathing just feet away. Her daughter moved weakly in her womb, and Maya found herself gripping the journal tighter, as if her great-grandmother's words could somehow protect them both. The radio crackled again. "Unit 7, we've got a domestic disturbance on Route 9. Need you to respond." "Copy that. Dispatch." "Walsh property appears secure. I'll follow up tomorrow." The footsteps retreated, and Maya heard the front door close. Only when the sound of a vehicle driving away faded completely did she allow herself to breathe again. Maya's hands trembled as she opened the leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed with age and brittle at the edges. The first entry was dated 1892, written in elegant script that seemed to dance across the page in the flickering candlelight. "My name is Esther Blackwood, and I am the last of my line to know the old ways. The mountain folk come to me when their children burn with fever, when wounds refuse to heal, when death circles too close. They call me a healer, but I know the truth. It is the blood that flows through my veins, the gift passed down from mother to daughter since time beyond memory." Maya sank into the wooden chair, her free hand instinctively moving to her belly where the baby kicked restlessly. The doctors had been clear about the genetic condition, a rare blood disorder that would likely claim her child's life within days of birth. The experimental treatments were expensive, with no guarantee of success. She'd come to the mountains, expecting nothing more than a place to hide from her mounting medical bills and the father who'd abandoned them both. She turned the page carefully, afraid it might crumble at her touch. "The gift requires sacrifice," Esther's words continued. "Each healing draws from the well of life within us, too much, too quickly, and the healer becomes the one who needs healing. But when wielded with wisdom, our blood can mend what others deem beyond repair." The journal detailed remedies that seemed to blur the line between science and magic. Teas brewed from mountain herbs that could slow a racing heart, poultices that drew poison from snake bites, and rituals performed under specific moon phases that could strengthen the life force of an unborn child. Maya's breath caught. There, in faded ink, was a passage titled "For the Child Who Struggles in the Womb." When a child carries the burden of weak blood, the mother must prepare before the birth moon rises. 7 nights of ritual, 7 offerings to the mountain spirits, 7 drops of the healer's blood mixed with spring water and silverleaf. The mother drinks this at dawn, facing east, while speaking the child's true name aloud. The wind outside had picked up, rattling the windows of the hidden room. Maya could hear branches scraping against the cabin's roof like skeletal fingers. She lit another candle from the box she'd found on the shelf, its flame casting dancing shadows on the stone walls. Further into the journal, she discovered detailed sketches of plants she didn't recognize, accompanied by notes about their properties. Moonbell for strengthening weak hearts, shadow moss for drawing out toxins, and something called silverleaf, described as the mountain's gift to those who know how to ask. The artifacts in this room, Esther had written near the middle of the journal, have been blessed by 7 generations of healing women. The silver bowl was my grandmother's, used to mix remedies under the full moon. The crystal pendant belonged to her mother, worn during difficult births to channel strength to both mother and child. Use them wisely, for they remember every life they have helped save. Maya looked up from the journal to study the objects arranged on the shelves with new understanding. What she had initially dismissed as old trinkets now seemed to pulse with purpose. The silver bowl caught the candlelight, its surface inscribed with symbols that looked older than any language she knew. The crystal pendant hung from a leather cord darkened with age, its facets refracting the flame into tiny rainbows. She returned to the journal, finding an entry that made her heart race. "My daughter Rebecca shows no sign of the gift, and I fear it may skip her generation, as it sometimes does. But should her daughter or granddaughter carry a child in need, let them know that the blood remembers. Even after lying dormant, it can wake when love and desperation call it forth. The mountain will provide what is needed, but only for those willing to walk the old paths." Maya closed her eyes, feeling the baby's movements beneath her ribs. 3 months until her due date. 3 months to learn everything Esther had spent a lifetime mastering. The logical part of her mind whispered that this was impossible, that she was grasping at fairy tales born from grief and desperation. But her blood seemed to thrum with recognition as she touched the crystal pendant, as if something deep within her was stirring to life after a long sleep. Thunder rolled across the mountains, and rain began to patter against the windows. Maya pulled the journal closer and continued reading by candlelight, searching for the specific plants and rituals Esther had described. If there was even a chance that her great-grandmother's legacy could save her child, she would learn every word, follow every instruction, walk whatever paths the mountains demanded. The baby kicked again, stronger this time, and Maya whispered, "Hold on, little one. Grandmother Esther is going to teach us both some very old magic." The journal's leather binding felt warm beneath Maya's trembling fingers as dawn light filtered through the cabin's grimy windows. She'd been reading for hours, piecing together fragments of her great-grandmother's extraordinary life. Each page revealed more impossible truths about healing rituals, herbal remedies that defied modern medicine, and a bloodline gift that skipped generations like stones across water. According to Ilara's careful script, the gift manifested differently in each bearer. Some could mend broken bones with touch, others could draw poison from wounds, and a rare few could heal conditions that threatened life before birth. Maya's hand instinctively moved to her belly where the baby stirred restlessly, as if sensing her mother's racing thoughts. The medical term echoed in her mind: spina bifida. The doctors had delivered the diagnosis with clinical detachment, explaining the baby's spine hadn't formed properly, that surgery after birth might help but couldn't guarantee a normal life. They'd offered other options, their voices carefully neutral, but Maya had refused to consider them. This child was wanted, fought for, loved already beyond measure. Now, surrounded by dusty artifacts and her ancestors' cryptic writings, she dared to hope for something beyond medical intervention. A sudden knock at the cabin door made her jump, the journal sliding from her lap. Through the window, she glimpsed a figure on the sagging porch, an elderly woman with silver hair braided down her back, wearing a faded denim jacket despite the morning chill. Maya opened the door cautiously, noting the woman's sharp green eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "You're Ilara's kin," the stranger said without preamble. It wasn't a question. "I'm Ruth Whitmore. Lived in these mountains all my life. Knew your great-grandmother well. She's been dead for decades," Maya replied, uncertain why she felt defensive. Ruth's weathered face creased into a knowing smile. "Death don't always mean gone, child, especially not for women like Ilara, like you." Her gaze dropped meaningfully to Maya's rounded belly. "May I come in? We got things to discuss." Against her better judgment, Maya stepped aside. Ruth entered with the confidence of someone familiar with the space, her eyes immediately finding the open journal on the floor, the scattered artifacts Maya had been examining. "You found her workroom," Ruth observed, settling into the cabin's only decent chair as if she'd done so countless times before. "Been wondering when one of her blood would finally come home." "Home?" Maya's voice cracked slightly. "This place is falling apart. I can barely afford to keep it." Buildings crumble, land endures, and some gifts can only be awakened in the place they were born. Ruth's expression grew serious. "Your baby's in trouble." Maya's breath caught. "How could you possibly know that?" "Same way I know you've been having dreams. Visions, maybe? Strange sensations when you touch certain objects." Ruth nodded toward the collection of stones and herbs Maya had found. "The gift's trying to surface, but it needs guidance, needs the right conditions." The baby kicked hard, making Maya wince. She'd been having unusual experiences since arriving at the cabin, moments where her hands grew warm, where she could swear she felt energy flowing through her fingers. She'd dismissed it as stress, hormones, wishful thinking. "Even if I believed any of this," Maya said carefully, "the journal entries are fragmented. Half the pages are missing, and the ones that remain read like fairy tales." Ruth stood and moved to a particular floorboard near the fireplace. To Maya's amazement, she pressed a specific spot, and the board lifted, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside lay another journal, this one newer, bound in dark green leather. Ilara knew someone would come eventually, someone who'd need more than just the old knowledge. Ruth handed Maya the second journal. "This one's got the real instructions, the how-to, not just the history." Maya opened to a random page and found detailed diagrams of hand positions, precise measurements for herbal mixtures, and step-by-step instructions for something called prenatal healing rituals. Her great-grandmother's handwriting was clearer here, more urgent. "She wrote this for you," Ruth continued. "Oh, not you specifically, but for whichever of her descendants would carry the burden and the gift." Ilara could see forward sometimes, glimpse the threads of possibility. "This is insane," Maya whispered, but her hands clutched the journal like a lifeline. "Is it more insane than accepting your child might never walk? More insane than a life of surgeries and limitations and wondering what if?" Ruth's voice gentled. "I'm not saying it's easy, child. The healing gift demands sacrifice. But it's real, and it's yours by right." Maya felt tears threatening. The rational part of her mind screamed that this was fantasy, desperation making her grasp at supernatural straws. But another part, deeper and older, recognized truth in Ruth's words. The baby moved again. a flutter that felt almost like agreement. If I wanted to try, Maya said slowly, what would I need to do? Ruth's smile was radiant. First, we rebuild this cabin properly. Can't work healing magic in a place that's falling down around your ears. The morning light filtered through the cabin's dusty windows as Maya carefully transcribed another passage from Eliza's journal. Her fingers ached from hours of writing, but she couldn't stop. Each entry revealed more about the healing gift that supposedly ran in her bloodline, a gift she desperately needed to understand before her next doctor's appointment. Sarah emerged from the kitchen carrying 2 steaming mugs. You've been at this since dawn. The journal isn't going anywhere. But time is. Maya accepted the tea gratefully, inhaling the earthy aroma. Listen to this entry from 1943. She read aloud. The Turner boy came today with the fever that's been taking children throughout the valley. His mother wept, certain he would join his sister who passed last week. I placed my hands upon his burning forehead and felt the familiar warmth flow through me. The sickness retreated like shadows before sunrise. Sarah settled beside her on the worn sofa. Maya, you can't honestly believe that I can heal people with my touch? Maya's laugh held no humor. A month ago, I would have called anyone who suggested it crazy. But look around us, Sarah. This place, these artifacts, the way I felt when I held that crystal yesterday. What did you feel exactly? Maya closed her eyes, remembering. Heat, like electricity running through my veins, and for just a moment, I could sense the baby's distress so clearly it took my breath away. Then I felt something else, a kind of reaching, as if something inside me was trying to connect with the life growing inside me. Sarah's expression softened with concern rather than skepticism. Even if there's something to this healing business, you can't rely on it instead of proper medical care. I'm not abandoning modern medicine. But what if this gift could supplement it? What if I could actually help my baby? Maya's hand moved protectively to her stomach. The doctors have been honest about the odds, Sarah. They're not good. A knock at the front door interrupted them. Through the window, Maya saw an elderly woman with silver hair braided down her back, leaning heavily on a walking stick. Mrs. Whitmore, Sarah said, opening the door. What brings you up the mountain? The old woman's keen eyes fixed on Maya. Heard Eliza's great-granddaughter was finally here. Thought it was time we met proper like. Maya stood, immediately noticing how Mrs. Whitmore favored her left leg. Please, come in. Would you like some tea? Don't mind if I do. Mrs. Whitmore hobbled inside, her gaze sweeping over the scattered journals and artifacts. Been wondering when someone would come back to claim Eliza's legacy. You knew my great-grandmother? Knew her? Child. She delivered me into this world in 1934. Saved my life more times than I can count after that, too. Mrs. Whitmore accepted a mug with gnarled hands. Last time was about 15 years ago when the cancer tried to take me. Doctors in town had given up, but Eliza, she had other ideas. Maya's pulse quickened. She healed your cancer? Fought it back long enough for those newfangled treatments to finish the job. Eliza always said modern medicine and the old ways worked best as partners, not enemies. Mrs. Whitmore studied Maya intently. You have the look of her, especially around the eyes. They say the gift often skips generations. I don't know if I have any gift at all. Don't you? Mrs. Whitmore extended her left hand. This old arthritis has been particularly ornery this week. Mind giving it a try? Sarah started to protest, but Maya was already reaching out. The moment her fingers touched Mrs. Whitmore's weathered skin, warmth flooded through her palm. She felt the inflammation in the woman's joints like tiny fires, and instinctively she imagined cooling water flowing from her hands. Mrs. Whitmore gasped softly. Well, I'll be. Maya pulled back, startled by the intensity of what she'd felt. Did something happen? The elderly woman flexed her fingers experimentally, then rolled her wrist in a complete circle. Haven't been able to do that in months. She looked at Maya with a mixture of wonder and recognition. You definitely have Eliza's gift, child. Stronger than I expected for someone untrained. This is impossible, Sarah whispered. Is it? Mrs. Whitmore gathered her walking stick, moving with noticeably less stiffness. Maya, dear, there are things about your family's history that weren't recorded in any journal. Secrets Eliza kept to protect the gift from those who would exploit it. If you're serious about learning, there are others in these mountains who remember, others who can teach you what your great-grandmother couldn't write down. Maya's heart raced. Others like her? Others like you. The bloodline didn't end with Eliza, and it won't end with you. Mrs. Whitmore paused at the door. But be warned, power like this always comes with a price. Make sure you're prepared to pay it. After she left, Maya stared at her hands, still tingling with residual energy. For the first time since her diagnosis, she felt something she'd almost forgotten, hope. The morning sun cast long shadows through the cabin windows as Maya sat at the kitchen table, her great-grandmother's journal open before her. The leather-bound pages crackled softly as she turned them, each entry revealing more about the healing traditions that ran in her bloodline. Her hand rested protectively over her belly, where the baby had been unusually quiet since yesterday's episode in the hidden room. Moonwater preparation requires 3 nights of exposure, she read aloud, following her great-grandmother's careful script with her finger. Collected during the waxing moon, blessed with intention and charged beneath the stars. The process seemed both mystical and methodical, like a recipe passed down through generations of women who understood something the modern world had forgotten. A soft knock at the front door interrupted her concentration. Maya closed the journal quickly, an instinct that surprised her with its intensity. Through the window she could see Dr. Sarah Chen standing on the porch, holding what appeared to be a medical bag. "Dr. Chen," Maya said, opening the door with surprise. "I wasn't expecting you. I hope you don't mind the house call." Sarah's smile was warm but professional. "I was visiting another patient nearby and wanted to check on you after yesterday. You seemed rather shaken when you left my office." Maya hesitated, acutely aware of the journal hidden just steps away. "That's very kind of you. Please, come in." As Sarah entered, her eyes swept the cabin with obvious curiosity. "This place has quite a history, doesn't it? I've heard stories about your great-grandmother from some of the older folks in town." "What kind of stories?" Maya asked, leading her toward the sitting area while steering clear of the kitchen table. "Healing stories, mostly. People speak of her with a kind of reverence you don't often hear." Sarah set down her bag and turned to face Maya directly. "There are those who believe she could work miracles." The baby suddenly kicked, a sharp movement that made Maya gasp and press her hand to her side. Sarah was beside her instantly, professional concern replacing casual conversation. "Are you experiencing pain? Any cramping or unusual sensations?" "No, it's just the baby's been more active lately." Maya settled into a chair, trying to appear calm while her mind raced. How could she explain the strange energy she'd felt in the hidden room, or the way the ancient symbols seemed to pulse with life? Sarah pulled a small device from her bag. "Would you mind if I listened to the heartbeat, just to be safe?" Maya nodded, lifting her shirt as Sarah positioned the Doppler. The familiar whooshing sound filled the room, but there was something different about the rhythm, stronger, more vibrant than before. Sarah's eyebrows raised slightly. "The heartbeat is excellent. Actually, it's remarkably strong for this stage of development." She studied the readings with obvious puzzlement. "Have you made any changes to your diet or activities recently?" "Not really," Maya lied, thinking of the strange tea she'd found among her great-grandmother's supplies and impulsively brewed that morning. "I've been trying to rest more since moving here." Sarah continued her examination, checking Maya's blood pressure and asking routine questions, but her expression remained thoughtful. When she finished, she sat back with the air of someone wrestling with something beyond medical explanation. "Maya, I need to ask you something, and I want you to know you can speak freely with me." Sarah's voice carried a careful weight. "Have you discovered anything in this cabin that might relate to your great-grandmother's healing practices?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Maya felt the pull of honesty warring with caution. There was something in Sarah's tone that suggested she knew more than she was letting on. "Why do you ask?" "Because your test results from yesterday were impossible," Sarah said quietly. "The protein levels that indicated potential complications have normalized completely. In 30 years of medicine, I've never seen such a rapid turnaround without intervention." Maya's heart hammered as she processed this information. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that either my lab made a significant error, which I've confirmed they didn't, or something has changed in your condition that defies conventional medical explanation." Sarah leaned forward. "My grandmother was one of the midwives who assisted your great-grandmother. She told me stories that I never fully believed until now. The admission hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they should cross." Maya felt the weight of the journal's secrets pressing against her consciousness, the pull of generations of women who had carried this knowledge in silence. "What did your grandmother tell you?" "That some bloodlines carry gifts that can't be measured in laboratories or explained in textbooks." Sarah's voice dropped to nearly a whisper. "And that sometimes, when the need is great enough, those gifts awaken." Maya placed both hands on her belly, feeling the steady flutter of life within. The baby seemed to respond to her touch, moving in a way that felt almost like recognition. Perhaps the time for secrets was ending. Maya's hands trembled as she opened the leather-bound journal to the page she'd bookmarked with a pressed wildflower. The candlelight flickered across her great-grandmother's spidery handwriting, casting dancing shadows on the walls of the hidden room. Outside, thunder rolled across the mountains like the footsteps of ancient giants. "The bleeding curse runs deep in our line," Evangeline's words seemed to whisper from the yellowed pages. "What gifts the earth grants, it often balances with sorrow. But there is hope in the old ways, in the covenant our people made with the mountain spirits long ago." Maya pressed her free hand to her belly, feeling the gentle flutter of movement within. At 24 weeks, her daughter was growing stronger, but the doctor's warning still echoed in her mind. The placental abnormalities, the risk of hemorrhaging that had claimed 2 generations of women before her. Modern medicine offered no guarantees. She turned the page carefully, her breath catching as she found what she'd been searching for, a detailed drawing of a ritual circle surrounded by symbols that matched the strange markings she'd discovered carved into the cabin's foundation stones. Below it, Evangeline had written instructions in a mixture of English and what Maya now recognized as Cherokee, the indigenous language her great-grandmother had learned from the mountain's original healers. A sudden gust of wind rattled the shutters, and one of the candles guttered out. Maya quickly relit it, her pulse quickening. She'd been coming to this room every night for the past week, slowly piecing together the fragments of her family's history, the artifacts surrounding her, crystals that seemed to pulse with their own inner light, herbs dried to preserve their potency across decades, tools carved from mountain stone. All of it pointed to something far beyond the simple folk remedies she'd initially imagined. The journal spoke of bloodline gifts that could heal or harm, of women who could draw sickness from the body with their bare hands, of powers that required a terrible price. Maya had always been good with plants, had an intuitive sense for what ailed people, but she'd attributed it to natural empathy. Now she wondered if there was more to it. She flipped forward several pages and found an entry dated just months before Evangeline's death. "The gift skips generations sometimes, laying dormant until great need awakens it. I have seen it in dreams. A daughter of my daughter's daughter will face the same trial that claimed my mother and her mother before. But she will have what they did not, the full knowledge, the complete ritual, the strength of all who came before flowing through her veins." Maya's skin prickled with goosebumps. Had Evangeline somehow known? Had she foreseen this moment, this choice that Maya now faced? The ritual described in the journal was complex, requiring specific herbs gathered under the full moon, water from a sacred spring that supposedly lay hidden somewhere on the property, and most crucially, the willingness to fully embrace whatever power flowed in her bloodline. The warnings were clear. Attempting the healing without complete commitment could prove fatal to both mother and child. A soft knock at the cabin's main door made Maya jump. She quickly closed the journal and blew out the candles, slipping from the hidden room and securing the entrance behind the false wall. Through the front window, she could see a familiar pickup truck in the driveway. "Maya, you okay in there?" Jake's voice carried concern even through the storm's noise. She opened the door to find him standing on the porch, rain dripping from his jacket, a thermos in his hands, and worry etched across his features. "I saw lights up here real late again," he said, stepping inside when she gestured him in. "Thought maybe something was wrong." Maya accepted the thermos gratefully, inhaling the rich scent of homemade soup. "Just couldn't sleep. The baby's been active tonight." Jake's eyes searched her face in the lamplight. "You sure that's all? You've seemed different lately, distant." She wanted to tell him everything, about the journal, the ritual, the impossible choice she was facing, but how could she explain something she barely understood herself? How could she ask him to believe in ancient magic and bloodline curses when she was still struggling to accept it? "I've been doing research," she said finally, settling onto the couch beside him. "About my family history, about what might help with the pregnancy complications. And—" Maya stared into the thermos, watching steam rise from the soup's surface. "I think my great-grandmother might have had some answers, some old remedies that could help." Jake was quiet for a long moment. "Maya, you know I'll support you no matter what you decide to do. But promise me you won't try anything dangerous without talking to me first." She met his eyes, seeing the depth of care there, the fear he was trying so hard to hide. "I promise." But even as the words left her lips, Maya knew that some choices had to be made alone. The morning light filtered through the cabin's windows differently now, as if the very air had changed overnight. Maya sat at the kitchen table, the journal open before her, studying the intricate diagrams that filled the pages. Her fingers traced the delicate illustrations of herbs and symbols, each one seeming to pulse with meaning she was only beginning to understand. Sarah had left an hour ago, promising to return with supplies from town, but not before helping Maya decipher more of her great-grandmother's notes. The revelation about the bloodline gift still felt surreal, like something from a dream that refused to fade upon waking. A sharp kick from the baby made Maya gasp, her hand flying to her rounded belly. The movement was stronger than before, more urgent. She closed her eyes and tried to sense what her great-grandmother's journal claimed she could, the life force flowing through her child. At first there was nothing but her own heartbeat. Then gradually she felt it, a faint flickering, like a candle struggling against wind. The doctor's words echoed in her memory. Genetic disorder, incompatible with life, no cure. But Eleanor's journal suggested otherwise. The gift wasn't just about healing herbs and mountain remedies. According to the faded ink, their bloodline could channel life force itself, redirecting it, strengthening it, even sharing it when necessary. The price, however, was steep. Maya had read that passage 3 times, each reading making her stomach clench tighter. She stood and walked to the hidden room, now permanently accessible since Sarah had helped her remove the concealing panel entirely. The artifact seemed to watch her as she entered, the crystal pendant catching morning light, the carved wooden bowl smooth from centuries of use, the bundle of dried herbs that somehow still retained their potency. Maya lifted the pendant, feeling its weight settle against her palm. The moment it touched her skin, warmth spread up her arm. The sensation was gentle but unmistakable, like recognition. She slipped the chain over her head, and immediately the baby's movements calmed. Following the journal's instructions, she began grinding specific herbs in the wooden bowl. Golden seal for purification, wild ginger for strength, and mountain mint for protection. The familiar motions felt oddly natural, as if muscle memory inherited through generations was guiding her hands. The sound of tires on gravel announced Sarah's return. Maya quickly tucked the pendant beneath her shirt and emerged from the hidden room as her friend entered the cabin, arms full of grocery bags. "Any luck with the research?" Sarah asked, setting the bags on the counter. "More than I expected." Maya helped unpack supplies, noting that Sarah had brought more herbs, candles, and what looked like medical equipment. What's all this? Sarah's expression grew serious. I made some calls this morning to people who understand things that conventional medicine doesn't. She pulled out a blood pressure cuff and a handheld fetal monitor. If you're really going to attempt what that journal describes, we need to monitor both you and the baby throughout the process. Maya's heart raced. You think it could actually work? I think your great-grandmother's reputation wasn't built on folklore and wishful thinking. Sarah unpacked more items: sterilized needles, medical-grade gauze, bottles of spring water. But I also think we're talking about something that pushes the boundaries of what's possible. The risks. I know the risks. Maya's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she touched the hidden pendant. The journal is very clear about what could happen. The ritual described in Eleanor's careful handwriting was both simple and terrifying. By using the bloodline gift to directly share life force with the unborn child, Maya could potentially correct the genetic flaw that threatened her baby's survival. But the transfer required her to give up years of her own life. How many years depended on the severity of the condition and the strength of her gift. Sarah moved closer, studying Maya's face. You're really considering this? I've already decided. The words surprised Maya with their firmness. She pulled out the pendant, letting it catch the light. This baby is everything I have left. If there's even a chance this could save him. Him? Sarah raised an eyebrow. Maya smiled for the first time in days. Just a feeling. Call it maternal intuition. She paused, looking down at the pendant. Or maybe it's the gift. I can sense him more clearly now, like he's trying to communicate. Sarah nodded slowly, then began organizing the medical supplies with practiced efficiency. Then we do this right. We monitor everything, follow the journal's instructions exactly, and we have backup plans. What kind of backup plans? The hospital is 30 minutes away if something goes wrong. I've also reached out to someone who specializes in alternative healing methods. She's driving up from Asheville this afternoon. The baby kicked again, and this time Maya was certain she felt something more than movement. A tiny spark of awareness, reaching out to her across the veil between worlds. The morning light filtering through the cabin's windows felt different, sharper somehow, as if the world itself had shifted overnight. Maya sat at the kitchen table, her great-grandmother's journal open before her, studying the intricate drawings of herbs and their corresponding healing properties. Her fingers traced the delicate illustrations of mountain laurel and wild ginseng, each sketch accompanied by careful notes in Eliza's flowing handwriting. "Mama, you're glowing," Lily observed from across the table, her spoon suspended halfway to her mouth, cereal milk dripping back into the bowl. Maya looked up, startled. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "Like when the sun comes through the stained glass at church, all golden and warm." Lily tilted her head, studying her mother with the unguarded curiosity only children possessed. "It's pretty." Before Maya could respond, a sharp knock echoed through the cabin. Through the window, she glimpsed Dr. Reeves's familiar truck parked beside her car. Her heart stuttered. Doctors didn't make house calls unless something was terribly wrong. "Stay here and finish breakfast," Maya told Lily, smoothing down her shirt as she walked to the door. Dr. Reeves stood on the porch, his expression unreadable. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his usually pristine white coat was wrinkled. "Maya, we need to talk about the baby." The words caught in her throat. "Among other things." His gaze swept past her into the cabin, landing briefly on the journal before returning to her face. "May I come in?" She stepped aside, her pulse quickening. "Lily, why don't you go play in your room for a bit?" "But I didn't finish." "Take the bowl with you. Just this once." Lily's eyes widened at this unprecedented permission, and she quickly gathered her breakfast, disappearing down the hallway with a delighted grin. Dr. Reeves settled into the chair Maya offered, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. "I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday, about the healing you described, and I ran some tests. quietly, on samples from patients who've been treated by people like your great-grandmother over the years. He paused, rubbing his temples. The cellular regeneration I found shouldn't be possible. Not with conventional medicine. Maya's hand instinctively moved to her belly. Are you saying it's real? I'm saying I've seen enough unexplained recoveries in these mountains to know there are things medical school didn't prepare me for. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. But Maya, there are others who've taken notice too. People who don't have the same respect for these gifts. A chill ran down her spine. What kind of people? The kind who collect things, artifacts, bloodlines, abilities they can exploit. His expression darkened. Word travels fast in small communities. Your inheritance, the sudden appearance of Eliza's descendant, it hasn't gone unnoticed. Maya's mind raced back to the feeling of being watched, the sense that unseen eyes had been tracking her movements. How long do we have? I don't know. Maybe days, maybe weeks. But you need to be prepared. He stood, pacing to the window that overlooked the forest. There's a network of people, guardians we call ourselves, families who've protected the old ways for generations. If you're willing, we can help. Help how? Training, protection. There are safe houses, people who understand what you're dealing with. He turned back to her, his expression grave. But first, you need to master what's inside you. The healing gift isn't just about saving your child. It's about ensuring these abilities don't fall into the wrong hands. Maya felt the baby shift within her, a gentle reminder of what was at stake. I barely understand it myself. Yesterday was the first time I felt anything happen. Then we start there. Dr. Reeves returned to his chair, pulling a small cloth bundle from his pocket. I brought something that might help. He unwrapped the fabric, revealing a smooth stone carved with symbols that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. Maya recognized them immediately. They matched the markings on several artifacts in the hidden room. This belonged to your great-grandmother. She gave it to my grandfather before she disappeared, told him to keep it safe until another healer emerged from her bloodline. He placed it in Maya's palm, and immediately she felt a surge of warmth travel up her arm. The stone grew brighter in her grasp, its carved symbols beginning to glow with soft amber light. Through the kitchen window, Maya could see the morning mist responding to the stone's energy, swirling and dancing as if drawn by an invisible force. It's reacting to you, Dr. Reeves murmured, wonder evident in his voice. Stronger than it ever did for Eliza. Maya stared at the stone, feeling ancient knowledge stirring in her blood like a long dormant river finally flowing toward the sea. The baby moved again, and she realized with startling clarity that her child wasn't just being healed by these abilities. She was being prepared to inherit them. When do we start? Maya asked, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what lay ahead. Dr. Reeves smiled, the first genuine expression of hope she'd seen from him. Right now. Maya's hands trembled as she opened the weathered journal to the page she'd bookmarked with a sprig of dried lavender. The candlelight flickered across Eliza's careful script, detailing the ritual that could strengthen the life force of an unborn child. Outside, thunder rumbled through the mountains, as if the storm itself was responding to her desperate search for answers. She'd spent 3 days gathering the required herbs from the mountainside, following the detailed sketches in the journal. Wild ginseng from the north-facing slopes, bloodroot from beneath the old oak trees, and rare ghost pipe that grew only in the deepest shadows. Each plant had seemed to call to her, their locations appearing in her mind like whispered directions from some ancestral memory. The baby had been still for hours now, and Maya fought the rising panic that threatened to overwhelm her concentration. Dr. Chen had warned her about decreased movement in the final weeks, but this felt different, ominous in a way that made her skin crawl with foreboding. "Trust the knowledge that flows through your veins," she whispered, repeating Eliza's words from the journal. "The gift is not learned, but remembered." Maya arranged the herbs in the silver bowl she'd found wrapped in silk beneath the floorboards. According to the journal, the bowl had belonged to 7 generations of healers, each woman adding her own protective energy to the metal. As Maya's fingers traced its intricate engravings, warmth spread up her arms, the same sensation she'd felt when touching the other artifacts. The ritual required moonlight, but heavy clouds obscured the sky. Maya closed her eyes and reached out with senses she was only beginning to understand. There, a thin break in the storm clouds, allowing a single shaft of silver light to pierce through. She positioned the bowl carefully on the windowsill, where the moonbeam fell across the gathered herbs. As she began grinding the roots together, the familiar tingling started in her fingertips. The sensation had grown stronger each day, as if pregnancy was awakening dormant pathways in her blood. The herbs released their earthy fragrance, but underneath lay something else, a metallic sweetness that reminded Maya of the moment before lightning strikes. She added 3 drops of spring water, just as the journal instructed, and watched in amazement as the mixture began to glow with a faint phosphorescence. The light pulsed gently, matching the rhythm of her own heartbeat, and Maya understood with sudden clarity that this was no coincidence. The ritual was designed to synchronize with the healer's life force, using it as a conduit to reach the child. Placing both hands over her swollen belly, Maya spoke the words Eliza had written in a mixture of English and what she now recognized as Cherokee. The phrases felt ancient on her tongue, as if she'd spoken them countless times before. The glowing mixture in the bowl grew brighter, and Maya felt a corresponding warmth building beneath her palms. Then came the vision. Maya found herself standing in the same cabin, but decades earlier. Eliza knelt beside a young woman in labor, her hands glowing with the same ethereal light that now emanated from Maya's fingers. The woman was dying. Maya could sense it in the way shadows gathered at the edges of the scene, but Eliza's gift was stronger than death's pull. "Live," Eliza commanded, her voice carrying absolute authority. "Both of you, live." The light intensified, until Maya had to close her eyes against its brilliance. When she opened them again, she was back in her own time, but the connection between past and present remained. She could feel Eliza's presence beside her, guiding her hands, lending her strength accumulated over decades of healing. Maya pressed down gently on her belly and felt the baby respond immediately, a strong kick that brought tears of relief to her eyes. But the ritual wasn't finished. Following instincts that seemed to come from somewhere beyond her own experience, Maya dipped her finger into the glowing mixture and drew a spiral pattern on her skin, starting at her heart and moving downward. The light sank into her flesh, and Maya gasped as she felt it travel through her bloodstream, seeking out her child. For a moment, she experienced a dual consciousness, her own awareness and that of the baby floating in its watery sanctuary. She felt its tiny heart beating steadily, its developing lungs preparing for first breath, its complete trust in the woman who carried it. More than that, she sensed the spark of something extraordinary within her child, the same gift that had passed from mother to daughter through generations uncounted. This baby would be a healer too, perhaps the strongest yet born to their bloodline. As the glow faded and the ritual concluded, Maya sank into the old rocking chair that had belonged to Eliza. The baby moved constantly now, stretching and turning as if energized by the connection they'd shared. Maya smiled through exhausted tears, knowing with absolute certainty that both their lives had been forever changed by what had just transpired. The storm outside began to clear, revealing stars that seemed unusually bright, as if celebrating the continuation of an ancient legacy. Maya's hands trembled as she traced the final entry in her great-grandmother's journal, the ink still vibrant despite decades of age. The words seemed to pulse with their own energy. The bloodline awakens only when hope seems lost, when love demands the ultimate sacrifice. Outside, the Tennessee mountains were shrouded in an unseasonable mist that had rolled in just after midnight. Through the cabin's windows, the fog appeared to swirl with purpose, as if the very air recognized what was about to unfold. Maya pressed her palm against her swollen belly, feeling the baby's restless movements. The doctors had been clear. Without the surgery her insurance wouldn't cover, Her daughter had little chance of survival. "I'm here, little one," she whispered. "We're going to figure this out." The hidden room had revealed more secrets since she'd first discovered it 3 weeks ago. What had initially appeared to be a simple collection of herbs and crystals now showed itself as something far more complex. The symbols carved into the walls seemed to shift in the candlelight, rearranging themselves into patterns that spoke directly to some deep, ancestral part of her mind. Maya lit the white sage bundle according to her great-grandmother's instructions, watching the smoke curl upward in delicate spirals. The journal had been explicit about timing. The ritual could only be performed during the new moon, when the veil between worlds grew thin. Tonight was her only chance before the baby came. She arranged the artifacts in the precise pattern described in the faded pages: obsidian stones at the cardinal points, a bowl of spring water from the creek behind the cabin, and at the center, a piece of amber that had belonged to 7 generations of women in her family. The amber seemed to glow from within, as if housing a fragment of captured sunlight. The first words of the ancient healing chant felt foreign on her tongue, but as she continued, something shifted. The syllables began to flow naturally, as if she'd spoken them 1,000 times before. The mist outside grew thicker, pressing against the windows like curious fingers. Maya felt the change begin as a warmth in her chest, spreading outward through her arms and down into her hands. When she looked down, her palms were emanating a soft golden light. The baby responded immediately, settling into a peaceful stillness that Maya hadn't felt in weeks. But something was wrong. The journal's warnings echoed in her mind. The gift demands balance. What is given must be taken. What is healed must be paid for. The room began to spin, and Maya gripped the edge of the altar to steady herself. Through the growing dizziness, she sensed another presence, not malevolent but ancient and watchful. The spirits of the women who had come before her, she realized, all those who had faced this same impossible choice. "Help me understand," she said aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. The amber pulsed brighter, and suddenly Maya was no longer alone in the room. Translucent figures surrounded her, women of different ages, all bearing the same determined expression she'd seen in her own mirror. At their center stood her great-grandmother, Eliza, just as she appeared in the faded photographs. "The power is yours by right," Eliza said, her voice like wind through autumn leaves. "But it cannot be used without cost. Your daughter's life can be saved, but the healing will bind you to this place, to this purpose. You will become the guardian, as I was, as my grandmother was before me." Maya felt the weight of understanding settle over her. To save her daughter, she would have to give up any chance of the normal life she'd dreamed of providing. She would become part of something larger, older, more mysterious than she'd ever imagined. "The choice is yours," Eliza continued. "But know that if you accept this path, you accept it for both of you. The gift will pass to her as well when her time comes." The golden light from Maya's hands intensified, and she could feel her daughter responding, growing stronger with each passing moment. The defect that threatened her life was already beginning to heal, cell by cell, heartbeat by heartbeat. Maya thought of all the women who would come to this cabin seeking help, just as desperate as she was now. She thought of her daughter growing up with purpose, with the ability to ease suffering and bring hope to the hopeless. "I accept," she said, and the words rang through the room like a bell. The spirits smiled and began to fade, but Eliza lingered for a moment longer. "Welcome home, granddaughter. The real work begins now." As the vision ended, Maya collapsed to her knees, exhausted but filled with a profound sense of rightness. Outside, the mist began to clear, revealing the first hint of dawn breaking over the mountains. Her daughter kicked once, strongly, and Maya laughed through her tears. She was no longer just Maya Thompson, struggling single mother. She was the newest link in an unbroken chain of healers, and her story was just beginning. The morning light filtered through the cabin windows differently now, as if the very air had shifted overnight. Maya sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup of elderflower tea, watching Dr. Sarah Chen review the journal entries she'd copied. The physician's expression grew more incredulous with each page. "Maya, I've been practicing medicine for 20 years, and I've never seen anything like what happened yesterday." Dr. Chen set the papers down carefully. "Your daughter's condition, it simply doesn't reverse itself that quickly. Not without intervention. But you said yourself that sometimes we see improvements, yes. But Emma's scans from last week showed significant developmental delays, potential cardiac issues. Yesterday's examination revealed a completely healthy child." Dr. Chen leaned forward. "I need to understand what you did." Maya's hand instinctively moved to her belly, where the baby seemed to respond with a gentle flutter. She'd spent the sleepless night grappling with the same question. The ritual in the hidden room felt like a dream now, but Emma's miraculous recovery was undeniably real. "I followed the instructions in my great-grandmother's journal," Maya said quietly. "There were herbs, specific arrangements, words that felt like they came from somewhere deep inside me." Dr. Chen picked up one of the dried plants Maya had brought. "Some of these I recognize. Traditional Cherokee remedies that do have documented healing properties. But Maya, what you're describing sounds like something beyond conventional medicine. You think I'm crazy?" "No." The word came out firm and immediate. "I think I'm witnessing something I can't explain, which as a scientist is both terrifying and fascinating." Dr. Chen stood pacing to the window. "I've worked with Cherokee healers before. There are documented cases of plant medicines producing remarkable results. But this suggests something more." Emma burst through the front door, her cheeks flushed from playing outside with Marcus. The change in her was startling, her eyes brighter, her movements more coordinated, her breathing unlabored. She ran to Maya with an energy that had been absent for months. "Mama, look what Marcus taught me." Emma held up a small carved whistle. "It sounds just like a bird." As Emma demonstrated, producing a clear, melodic note, Maya noticed something that made her breath catch. The sound seemed to resonate through the cabin in a way that felt familiar, like the humming vibration she'd experienced during the ritual. "That's beautiful, sweetheart," Maya managed, though her mind was racing. Marcus appeared in the doorway, his weathered face creasing with concern as he noticed Dr. Chen. "Everything all right?" "Dr. Chen was just checking on Emma," Maya explained. And finding her remarkably improved, Dr. Chen added, studying Marcus with new interest. "You've lived in these mountains your whole life, haven't you?" Marcus nodded slowly. "Born and raised, as were my parents and their parents before them." "Have you ever witnessed unusual healings, things that couldn't be explained through conventional medicine?" The old man's eyes flicked to Maya, a silent question passing between them. She gave an almost imperceptible nod. "There are stories," Marcus said carefully. "Families with gifts passed down through generations, women who could heal with their hands, who understood the old ways." He paused, watching Emma play with the whistle. "Eliza Montgomery was one of them. Her healing abilities were legendary." Dr. Chen sat down heavily. "So you're saying this is hereditary? Some kind of genetic predisposition to, what? Channeling energy? Activating dormant healing responses?" "I'm saying there are things in these mountains that science hasn't caught up to yet," Marcus replied. "Doesn't make them less real." Maya felt the baby shift again, and with it came a sudden wave of clarity. The gift wasn't just about the rituals or the herbs, it was something within her bloodline, something that had skipped generations until now, when it was desperately needed. "Dr. Chen," Maya said, her voice steady despite her racing heart, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to consider it seriously." The physician turned to her with rapt attention. "If I could safely accelerate my pregnancy, ensure this baby is born healthy despite the complications, would you help me?" "Maya, what you're suggesting?" "I'm not talking about medical intervention. I'm talking about using the same methods that healed Emma. But I can't do it alone." Dr. Chen was quiet for a long moment, looking between Maya, the journal entries, and Emma's vibrant, healthy form. Finally, she spoke. "If you can show me the process, help me understand it from a medical perspective, then yes, I'll help you." She paused, her clinical composure cracking slightly. "But Maya, you need to understand, if this goes wrong, I could lose everything. My license, my practice, my reputation." Maya reached across the table and took the doctor's hand. "And if we don't try, I could lose everything too." Outside, storm clouds were gathering over the mountains, but inside the cabin, Maya felt a strange sense of peace settling over her. The ancient stone circle hummed with energy as Maya knelt at its center, her hands pressed against the smooth granite altar. The journal lay open beside her, its pages fluttering in the mountain wind that seemed to whisper secrets through the towering pines. 3 days had passed since she'd discovered this sacred place her great-grandmother had described, and tonight marked the lunar convergence Ilara's notes had specified. "The healing must be completed when the moon stands directly above the 7 stones," Maya whispered, reading aloud from the weathered pages. "Only then will the bloodline gift reach its full power." Her unborn daughter shifted restlessly within her, and Maya placed a protective hand over her swollen belly. The doctors in town had been blunt. The genetic condition would be fatal without intervention they couldn't provide. But here, surrounded by centuries of accumulated healing energy, Maya felt hope burning brighter than the flickering candles she'd arranged around the circle. The artifacts from the hidden room were arranged precisely as Ilara's diagrams indicated. The silver amulet hung around Maya's neck, its ancient symbols warm against her skin. The crystal vial containing her great-grandmother's preserved tears sat at the eastern point, and the bone knife, handle carved with protective runes, rested within easy reach. As the moon climbed higher, shadows danced across the clearing. Maya had studied every page of the journal, memorized every incantation, but doubt still gnawed at her. What if she failed? What if the bloodline had grown too weak over the generations? "You're not alone in this." Maya's head snapped up. A translucent figure emerged from the tree line, tall, elegant, with silver hair that seemed to capture moonlight. The woman wore a dress of deep forest green, and her eyes held the same unusual amber flecks Maya had always seen in her own reflection. "Ilara?" Maya's voice was barely a whisper. Her great-grandmother's spirit nodded, moving closer until she stood at the circle's edge. "The veil is thin here tonight. I've been waiting for you to find this place, child. The healing requires more than knowledge. It needs the strength of our entire lineage." Other figures began to materialize around the circle, women of different ages, all bearing the same distinctive eyes, the same determined set to their shoulders. Maya recognized some from old photographs, while others seemed to stretch back through centuries of family history. "We are all here," said a woman in colonial dress, her voice carrying the weight of generations. "Every mother who came before, every healer who walked this path." Maya felt their combined presence like a warm embrace. The pendant around her neck began to glow with soft silver light, and she understood that she was part of something far greater than her own desperate love for her child. "Begin the incantation," Ilara instructed. "We will guide your hands." Maya lifted the crystal vial, her voice growing stronger as she spoke the ancient words. The language felt familiar on her tongue, as if it had been sleeping in her blood for decades. The liquid within the vial began to shimmer, and when she drank it, power flooded through her veins like liquid starlight. The baby stirred, and Maya gasped as she felt her daughter's life force more clearly than ever before. The genetic damage was there, twisted strands of inheritance that would steal her child's future. But now Maya could see the pattern, understand how to reshape it. She picked up the bone knife, its blade gleaming in the moonlight. Following Ilara's guidance, she pricked her finger and let 3 drops of blood fall onto the altar stone. The granite absorbed them instantly, and the entire circle began to pulse with rhythmic light. "Place your hands here," Ilara directed, indicating 2 smooth depressions in the altar's surface that Maya hadn't noticed before. "Reach into your daughter's essence. Feel the threads of her being." Maya pressed her palms into the stone hollows and closed her eyes. Immediately, she was somewhere else, inside a vast tapestry of light where genetic code appeared as shining threads. Some blazed with health and possibility, while others were dark and tangled. With infinite care, guided by the whispered instructions of her ancestors, Maya began to weave new patterns. The pendant's power flowed through her hands, allowing her to strengthen weak strands and repair damaged sequences. She could feel her daughter's gratitude, a pulse of pure love that brought tears to her eyes. Time became meaningless. Maya worked with the patience of generations, feeling her foremother's hands steady her own when exhaustion threatened. Finally, as dawn approached, the last corrupted thread was mended. The tapestry blazed with perfect, healthy light. Maya opened her eyes to find herself alone in the circle. The spirit women had faded with the night, but their love remained like an invisible blanket around her shoulders. The pendant had returned to its normal silver gleam, and the journal S pages had mysteriously turned to a passage she'd never seen before. "The healing is complete," she read aloud, her voice thick with exhaustion and joy. "The bloodline continues, stronger than ever." As she gathered the sacred artifacts, Maya felt her daughter's strong, healthy heartbeat synchronizing with her own. Dr. Reeves crouched at the circle's edge, her medical bag forgotten as she watched Maya arrange the herbs with practiced precision. "I still think we should get you to a hospital," she whispered, but her voice carried no conviction. She had seen too much in the past few days to deny what was happening here. "The bleeding hasn't stopped," Maya said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. "Modern medicine can't fix what's wrong. This is something deeper." She placed her hand on her belly, feeling the flutter of life within, weaker now than it had been that morning. Sage had returned just after sunset, her arms full of mountain laurel and bloodroot, plants that had no business blooming in November but had appeared where Maya needed them most. The girl's eyes held an ancient knowledge that made Maya's breath catch. "The mountain remembers," Sage had said simply. "It knows what's needed." Now those same plants lay arranged around the altar in patterns Maya somehow understood without thinking. Her great-grandmother's journal had been specific about the ritual, but Maya felt the knowledge flowing through her blood, as if Elara herself guided her hands. The wind picked up, and the trees surrounding the clearing began to sway in unison. Maya felt the first stirring of power deep in her chest, a warmth that spread outward like honey in her veins. She had felt it before, in smaller doses, when she had healed Sage's cuts, when she had sensed the cabin's history in her dreams. But this was different. This was the full awakening her bloodline had been preparing for across generations. "Maya." Dr. Reeves's voice was tight with worry. "Your temperature is spiking." But Maya barely heard her. She was sinking into the ritual now, her consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of her own body. She could feel the mountain's heartbeat beneath her knees, the slow pulse of ancient stone and deep roots. She could sense the lives of every creature in the forest, from the deer picking their way through the underbrush, to the owls beginning their nightly hunt. And she could feel her child, really feel her for the first time, a bright spark of potential, struggling against something dark and foreign that wrapped around her like strangling vines. Maya understood now why the pregnancy was failing. This wasn't a medical condition, it was an attack. The journal had mentioned them, the devourers, entities that fed on the life force of gifted bloodlines. They had hunted her family for centuries, drawn to the power that flowed in their veins. Maya's great-grandmother had defeated them once, but they had returned, sensing new prey. Maya reached deeper into the ritual, calling on power that had lain dormant in her blood since birth. The herbs around the altar began to smoke without fire, releasing a silver mist that spiraled upward into the night sky. The stone circle pulsed with light, ancient symbols carved into its surface blazing to life. "I see them," Maya gasped, her eyes still closed. In her expanded awareness, the devourers were visible as writhing shadows, feeding on her child's developing life force like parasites. They recoiled as her power touched them, but their grip was strong. Sage stepped into the circle, her young face grave with purpose. "You can't do this alone. The journal says the ritual requires a witness, someone to anchor you to the physical world while you fight them." Maya nodded, not breaking her concentration. She felt Sage's small hand slip into hers, and suddenly the girl's strength joined her own. More than strength, understanding. Sage carried the bloodline too, Maya realized. Distant, diluted, but real. The battle was fought in a space between worlds, where thought became action and will became weapon. Maya wrapped her consciousness around the devourers like a net of silver fire, burning them away from her child's spirit. They fought back, trying to drain her life instead, but Maya was ready for them. She had generations of inherited knowledge flowing through her, techniques passed down in blood and bone. One by one, the shadow parasites dissolved under her assault. She felt her child's life force brighten, strengthening with each victory. The cramping in her abdomen eased, and the bleeding finally stopped. When it was over, Maya collapsed against the altar, exhausted but triumphant. Dr. Reeves was beside her instantly, checking her pulse, her temperature, her blood pressure. Everything was normal, better than normal. "How do you feel?" the doctor asked, though her expression suggested she already knew the answer. Maya smiled, one hand resting on her belly where new life pulsed strong and steady. "Like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Above them, the first stars appeared in the clear mountain sky. Maya's hands trembled as she placed them on her swollen belly, feeling the familiar flutter of her daughter's movement within. The ancient artifacts lay arranged in a perfect circle around her on the cabin's wooden floor, their surfaces gleaming with an otherworldly light that seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. Dr. Chen's words echoed in her mind. The genetic condition would claim her baby's life within hours of birth, just as it had claimed so many others in her family line. But not tonight. Tonight, she would break the curse that had haunted her bloodline for generations. The journal lay open beside her, its yellowed pages revealing the final ritual her great-grandmother Ayana had never been able to complete. The Cherokee healer had died protecting this knowledge, ensuring it would pass to someone worthy when the time was right. Maya understood now why the cabin had called to her, why every instinct had driven her to this remote mountain sanctuary. Thunder rolled across the Tennessee peaks as Maya began to chant the words written in Ayana's careful script. The language felt foreign on her tongue yet familiar in her soul, as if the syllables had been sleeping in her DNA, waiting for this moment to awaken. The artifacts responded immediately. The crystal pendant blazed within a fire, the carved stones hummed with energy, and the silver bowl filled with water that reflected not the ceiling above, but a star-filled sky. Pain lanced through Maya's abdomen, sharp and demanding. The baby was coming, weeks earlier than expected. She gritted her teeth and continued the chant, her voice growing stronger as the ancient power flowed through her veins. She could feel her great-grandmother's presence in the room, a warm hand on her shoulder, guiding her through each sacred word. The cabin's walls began to glow, revealing symbols that had been invisible before, protective wards and healing sigils that Ayana had carved into the very foundation of this place. Maya realized she wasn't just performing a ritual, she was activating a massive healing construct that had been building power for over a century, waiting for her arrival. Another contraction seized her, stronger this time. Maya gasped but didn't stop. The journal's pages fluttered without any wind, settling on a passage she hadn't seen before. New words appeared on the parchment, written in the same hand but glowing with silver light. The healing comes not from changing what is, but from giving what was broken the strength to become whole. Understanding flooded through her. The genetic condition wasn't something to be erased. It was part of who her daughter was meant to be. But with the healer's gift flowing through both of them, that difference could become a strength rather than a death sentence. Maya placed her hands on the silver bowl, watching the starlit water swirl into a spiral galaxy of light. The contractions came faster now, but each one brought waves of healing energy that wrapped around her unborn child like a protective cocoon. Maya could sense her daughter's spirit, fierce and bright, already fighting to live. She poured every ounce of love and determination into the ritual, feeling her great-grandmother's power merge with her own. "Live," she whispered to her child, "live and carry our gift forward." The artifacts erupted in brilliant light, just as Maya's water broke. But instead of fear, she felt only peace. The healing energy saturated every cell of her body, every chromosome of her daughter's developing form. The genetic flaw remained, Maya could sense it, but now it was balanced by something far more powerful. Her daughter would not only survive, she would thrive. Hours passed in a blur of labor and light, the cabin serving as a sanctuary between worlds where ancient magic could work its deepest healing. When Maya finally held her daughter in her arms, the baby's eyes opened to reveal irises flecked with the same silver light that had filled the bowl. She was perfect, not because the condition was gone, but because she was exactly who she was meant to be. The artifacts had dimmed to their normal appearance, but Maya could feel their power still humming quietly in the background. This cabin would remain a place of healing, and her daughter would one day learn to use these tools just as Ayana had intended. The bloodline gift hadn't ended with Maya. It had been reborn, stronger than ever. Outside, dawn broke over the Tennessee mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Maya looked down at her daughter, who had fallen asleep with tiny fingers wrapped around her mother's thumb. "Welcome to the world, Ayana Rose," she whispered, naming her for the great-grandmother whose sacrifice had made this miracle possible. The journal's pages rustled one final time before falling still, its purpose finally fulfilled. The curse was broken, the bloodline healed, and a new generation of healers had been born. In the growing morning light, Maya began to plan the future she would build for her daughter in this magical place where hope had conquered fear.